Welcome to today's repertoire testing video. We have white against an 1804, and we are going to play not exactly a French because they've played b6. So we're going to have to adapt to that. We'll start with basic knight move. Do you want to play c3 or knight bishop d3 and allow for c3 later, or knight c3? We have often said knights first, but I think we will adapt to black's setup, and we will stick with castling. Okay, knight c6, attacks d4, but that's protected, so it's fine. Probably just bishop f4, knight d2, stuff like that. I don't know where that knight's going. It's going to go to e7. I really don't think it should have moved in the first place, all that does is blocks the king side pieces. So I guess I could ask, do I have any way to punish that by acting fast? But I'm never very good in these situations. So we'll keep playing normal moves, I think. We need to connect the rooks. I guess c4? Maybe rook d1, rook c1, and try to break with c5. That's probably the most powerful detonation. Okay. I was going to play bishop g3 if they'd attacked it with the knight, but given that they're probably going to keep throwing the g and h pawns, we should probably go with e3. I don't know if they'd even plan f5. That's asking a lot. G4, probably just knight e1. I don't think we go up to h4. Maybe there's an argument for that, but I think I'd rather not. So I am leaning rook d1, and then as I said, we want to break something open. Everything is protected right now. e4 is double protected, so let's start with this. Which is also nice because if they do chase the knight back to e1, then our rook is already out where it wants to be, not stuck on f1. This is trying to judge where the most useful files for the rooks are. So that suggests knight f4. So I could play g3 to stop that. That would be if I don't want to play bishop takes, pawn takes, open the g file, which I don't think I'm unhappy about, honestly. Could do something weird like knight e5 discovery, but I don't think that makes much sense. So maybe we just go c5. If they go d5, then we can play knight e5. That might be better timing. Yeah, I think I like that. And if we're starting to open the d file, that should be to our benefit. That's why I put the rook on d1. It lands up with their queen, and it's boxed on b8 or something weird. I think we're happy with that. So I definitely do not approve of the way black has played this, but of course, my goal is still to show that convincingly. And by the way, not knight takes g5, because after pawn takes, the rook protects the knight, so that wouldn't actually be a tactic. Okay, they are finally slowing down. Okay, so they definitely want to get both knights there, which does incline me towards g3, just to really shut down their idea, because they've devoted a lot of moves now to trying to put a knight on f4, and it looks to me like I could stop that all with one move of my own. I don't think it should have a lot of consequences long term. I just don't think they're in position to take advantage of that open space. I don't know if I'd ever play d5. Try to break through on e6 again while their king is still in the center. Maybe, like we're just trying to blow everything open, basically, however it is that we can manage that. Slightly unfortunate that the bishops are in the way of queen and bishop, but ideally those would support pawns. I might also be able to argue, okay, I thought e5 and try to play bishop takes g6, which is kind of ruled out because of the rook, but they have left this knight now kind of unprotected. So if we think about knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes, I think that would be worth it. But they could play knight takes g3. And then I don't think it is worth trading knights like that, because they'll be attacking my queen, so I'm going to abandon that. I don't really want to take with the c-pawn, because that would release this tension, and their responses would become quite a bit more flexible compared to something like... Again, I am wondering about this d5. So if they push, can you really cramp in with c6, bishop c8? Don't know if I want to chase their bishop around to a square like g4. This knight might come back to e1 anyways, just to attack this knight. How do I do this effectively? I really am inclined towards d5. But it also feels really unnecessary. Like, I don't have to blow it open when I have a lot of quiet or superiority. Like, I can just keep things going as is, and that will still be very good for me. d5 round. I'm spending way too much time on this decision. I think we're going to play flexibly, but that means I need to start playing faster because the game's going to last a little longer if I'm not trying to smash through really quickly. So there are a lot of things that I hope you can copy from watching me play, but my time management is not one of them. I'll try to stick to simpler moves for the time being. Because rook g8, like, it really doesn't do anything. Like, the g-pawn might go one step, but that's it. I don't think there's anything weird like a knight f4. I'm still going to be able to take that, at least with the bishop, and then not really run into a problem. Because they can't afford to sack a piece. So like knight takes, I think, just doesn't work, and if they play pawn takes, I think I'm pretty okay with that. Because I'll still have a strong pawn wall. They've helped me open the e-file a little more. So I wonder what I can do with that. But no, this I just don't think works, because pawn takes, yeah, it's a discover check, but just king h1. Notably, they can't bring the queen in. Even if they could, there'd be rook g1, so I think this just doesn't work. I don't see how this can be a problem. So yeah, tuck the king away. Keep an eye on this bishop on c6, but that shouldn't be a big deal. And then as far as stabilizing this, okay. So probably take once, or do we actually ignore that? No, because then I think they grab a second pawn, just that they'll play bishop takes. I don't think that bishop actually bothers me that much, so let's do this. And then I think we will just go rook g1. I just want to make sure my king has some breathing room. Not that I run into some stray check by the light square bishop and find that I don't actually have a response. Otherwise, I'd say knight b3, which I'm sure is still good. Threatens bishop b5 check. If they play queen b6, then they might be in time to castle. So yeah, okay, let's definitely do this before they get to that. Pieces are still protected. I'll be cautious that the bishop is only protected by my queen, but that's enough. Because yeah, if this queen had moved and they could long castle, I would find that kind of annoying that their other rook could come over. I guess that would drop the a6 pawn. I've been keeping an eye on that. But because they have to respond to this, that just hurts their attack that much more. It's like, if you have an attack, like, you should be the one playing with initiative. You should be the one who's able to make threats, but if you're trying to attack and you find yourself responding to your opponent's moves, it's probably a sign you're not going to accomplish very much. Okay, we could grab that. We could play knight e5. So I grab that. It sort of fixes their pawns, but I don't think I mind that. e6 becomes weaker. Is there any downside to not taking? I don't think so, but we'll go with this. And I think I will come back to knight b3, chase that bishop. Yeah, we'll chase that, and then maybe king g1, since the g file is closed. And then I'll have more freedom to play a move like e5. I'm thinking especially if they play bishop d6, I'd like to play e5, but I just want to stay away from that light square bishop. So yeah, actually, I think bishop d5, e5, I think they can take that, because queen takes, they take on d3, although then it gets weird. I think I'd have a problem with the knight on f3, so I would not be going in for that if they play bishop d6, and that starts to explain why I think king g1 first. And if their queen ends up giving a check on g5, not likely to be a problem if it's just the queen on its own. So I'm not sure what they are planning. I think they would like to move their queen and castle. I guess that counts as a tactic, because of this bishop on d3. But what if I play rook d1? Because I was thinking of this before when there was a rook here, bishop b5 check is a threat. But now my bishop is protected. I am threatening that discovery, and they also have a bishop hanging on f2. And they do not have a way to connect their queen and bishop. There's no queen h4 because of the knight. Bishop d4 doesn't work because I have two knights. Even if I didn't actually take one straight, and then bishop b5 would still work with the queen on d4 instead of d8. So I think we may have talked about this in one of our more recent games, but it is feeling like black was trying to be very creative, and it was again to their detriment. Because now I think for sure my pieces are pretty secure. I did mention that a few moves ago, if you remember. I have to be careful of this bishop being a little loose. But I think rook d1 is a good solution. Our opponent has spent a lot of time contemplating. I do wonder if this is just going to run to 0, but either way, I think we would be likely to win this game. And so they do. Alright. Well, we got a nice short one today, and not a bad thing given played odd opening. I won't be rematching because we have some analysis to do. And I don't think that there's much to say about this opening, because they deviated on move 2. I don't think we cover this anywhere, because it's just not common enough. I think I won't even check the repertoire itself. I'll just look at the opening database briefly when we switch to the computer analysis. But I don't know how much I have to say about this. Like, I'm just playing normal developing moves as much as possible, even when it took me too long to do it. c5, I could have prepared this with rook c1. Especially given that technically here they could consider taking twice with their bishop, although I was never worried about that kind of thing if it in part opens the d file, and it would also require them to split up their pawn structure. If we go pawn takes, pawn takes, they end up with double isolated pawns, and we're never unhappy about that. You can plant a piece right on c4, and I think white would be doing very well. But they tried to construct some kind of attack that I think just does not work. I didn't like pawn takes, because then pawn takes, discover check, attacks the bishop. Probably still fine. We just move the king, they take the bishop, we take back. But I liked it better taking with the pawn first. Or sorry, with the bishop first. So do I have any questions about whether that was correct. Pawn takes, knight takes, the g file is closed. I don't think that makes any sense at all. Pawn takes, pawn takes. I think I like bishop takes. It's kind of an unusual capture when we have the option of taking with a pawn and we choose to take with a piece. But so far just a piece trade, but yeah, I think they had to play pawn takes, that it is in fact just a piece trade. They can only take once more. Their knight and their rook are not enough. Their queen still doesn't have a way to join. And then I can keep doing whatever I'm doing in the center. But this, I think, is just a piece. They did end up grabbing this pawn, but that should not be enough when they have given me a piece. Like, it's 2 knights for a bishop and 2 pawns, I guess. But we can neutralize anything about their attack pretty quickly. I guess they could have considered rook takes, bishop f2. No, because then we have rook g8. That's their problems. They can't let me get a rook to g8. So that's what they're trying to respond to with rook g6. But it does give us another move to develop. In retrospect, should I have stopped this? I don't think so. I think rook d1 was good enough. Because I can't really play rook d1 here because this knight's still in the way. I was thinking about something like knight e5, attack g6, but maybe that allows queen g5. Didn't feel like it would be correct to send the knight forward on its own. So we're still coordinating with a move like knight b3 and also with rook d1, and yeah, it seemed like my opponent agreed that this should be winning the game for white. So still no perfect game. I think we haven't had one of those yet playing through this series. 2 inaccuracies along the way. Okay, so this does not seem to be a good structure for black by the looks of it. It's already close to a full pawn advantage. So when we get here, this much we play, and this is the French, but b5 down at 5%. Out of your French games, which only make up about 10%, it's a really small amount of games. That's why we don't cover something like that. If you wanted to make a note after playing a game like this for yourself, of course you can do that, but given that it's just not a great setup for black, I would not feel like I had to prepare anything. I would just trust myself that I can just play normal moves and be quite a bit better, which it appears I am, although bishop f4 may not be totally correct, and I can turn on the computer. So rook e1 first, c4, and just not declaring with that bishop, I guess. We want to be more ready for knight b4, okay. Because then this bishop can't really retreat because we might lose the pawn on e4. It's like this. We'd like to play bishop e2 so the bishop can't be captured, but that would lose this pawn. So we would have to let them take the bishop if we did that. Which is why it suggests a move that doesn't run into that problem. Like rook e1 partly overprotects, but also when they attack, we also have the option of going all the way back to f1. So sure, I can agree that was more accurate. We were just trying to play normal, but we did overlook a little thing there. And then I don't know how much I will have to say about this game. So bishop could go to g3. I was not keen on that because, as I said, I was thinking about these pawns continuing forward, but maybe that's just pretty slow. It doesn't actually get there, but bishop e3 is still fine. And then rook d1 is not our best square for that rook. It wants us to start with a queenside rook mostly, or we can break right away with e5, which is what I was getting at. My comment in the game is that when we have these kinds of positions, I am so bad at choosing which pawn I am supposed to push. So e5, it does create what we might call these 2 points of contact, where we're attacking the knight and the pawn. So if they move the knight, we're guaranteed to be able to take the pawn at least. And if they take, then we can play knight takes, and just be positionally better, I suppose. All their pieces are doing well, the rooks can maybe follow, although I'm also seeing f4 would be an alternative pawn break. Okay. Rook d1, what does that allow? Knight g4, maybe it's the same kind of thing, we're not supposed to let them take our bishop so easily. How if we compare this then? If we go knight takes, knight g4 is not possible. Okay. And if they don't take, if they play knight g4 right away, is the better question. Then we just, I don't know, take that. Okay, and then follow with another pawn, something like d5. Well, that is more or less what I was trying to do in the game, is to break open this central pawn wall because they have not shown any interest in castling, but I guess I could have been more effective in doing that. But okay, at least I got some points that c5 was a good move, along with e5 again. They are trying to act like they're doing something productive, but they're really not. g3, as I described, they are very keen on playing this move, so I thought it was worth stopping them. Because something else, I mean, I guess we'd be talking like maybe rook c1, but then we have to trade at least one of our bishops, and actually it would be really bad to play bishop takes f4. That's interesting. I would not have been expecting that. Compare it to queen f1, let's say takes. I guess our queen actually is loose here, so that's a problem when they play pawn takes, that we can't play pawn takes back because our queen is loose. But okay, don't need to go into that much depth. It's a much simpler point that I know what my opponent wants to do. Seems like it could be irritating, so we have a pretty simple way to stop that I did not think had any real drawbacks. So rook comes over. Looks like we perhaps should take with one of the c-pawns. I was contemplating d5. Would that have been too risky? Not necessarily, but I felt like I could be going down a pawn for no real reason. Would have had some purpose to it. Like again, we're trying to break open the center. Likes better, let's say we take here. And having done that, now we can take on g5 maybe, or play d5. What we're looking at here, I think it was this move. What was I thinking about here? I don't remember exactly, but it is interesting to note that knight f4 becomes really disruptive, a really unexpected wrench. Okay, we'll pass over that. Rook c1, they did go for this. Interestingly, the other knight would have been their best move. I am fascinated to notice that a knight on g6 is better than a knight on h5 if they had played it this way. Which I would think is maybe because the h-pawn is not blocked, but I'm not entirely sure what to say there. Compared to the way they played it, bishop takes, and yeah, they definitely had to play g takes. And then, I'm not sure. I hadn't thought, I think, that much about what I was going to do next. Again, I was never fully pleased with taking with the c-pawn, because it felt like it didn't really accomplish anything. It just felt like it cleared the position more for black than for me. I mean, I'm noticing there's a sacrifice of bishop on b5 here, which is a fascinating choice. But okay, it's because actually there was this knight hanging on h5, so that might give us one of the explanations for why is there a knight better placed on g6 than on h5, because white gets to play bishop b5 check. If anyone saw that, well done. But yeah, knight takes, definitely not correct. We just grab a piece, and then it looks like our consolidation, securing the position, went smoothly enough, even if it doesn't love rook g1. Knight b3 first, yeah, I'm still fine with that. Let's say we had gone with takes. King e7, I guess, gets away from rook g8. But I mean, we're basically just up a piece. The pawns really don't play a role. Their bishops don't look very effective. I guess we can still be a little cautious about the bishop on d3, but altogether I think this is just a piece up. I don't feel like I have to explain that. Takes, could have played e5, knight b3 is also good, and then rook d1, yeah, is an important move to finish off. I definitely did not like queen takes, partly because if black ever wins this pawn on e4, that is going to spell a real danger for the king, I think. It's going to lose its last real bit of shelter. I can't even play rook d1 because that square is not protected. Just didn't like the feel of this, where they get to activate their pieces, and I didn't feel like that was right. But rook d1 is a great solution. Again, if they move the bishop, there's bishop b5 check, if nothing else, and that wins the queen because it's discovery. And of course, if they move the queen, we just take the bishop. So that was that. Okay, so unconventional game. Black chose something pretty offbeat and not something that was, I think, very justifiable. Did a pretty reasonable job. I was never worse, certainly. Could have been a little more accurate at points, but good enough. Thank you for watching our game today. We'll see you for another one soon.